Welcome back to Advertising is Dead. We with a bunch of really interesting people today. We have Hanita, Kevin, and Arjun here. We're talking to them about a bunch of things. I'm actually trying to encompass what I want to talk to all of you all about. But what I want to start off with is is something which has been my experience for the last few years of just how my music listening patterns have changed. And in many ways, when I was running through the report that Spotify put out, I'm like, one second, I'm listening like a Gen Zer more than I'm listening like a millennial. So can I become an honorary Gen Z right now? But I want to kind of start off by asking um, both Hanif and Kevin this thing: how has your creation process been in the last few years? I'll start off with you, Hanita.
Um, I think COVID has really impacted the way we create. Um, Earlier, there used to be this cycle where you release music and then you tour to promote it.
Hmm.
And, there was a huge gap between when you're putting out your first release and second release. And I think that's really changed in the last couple of years, where I see a lot of people actually releasing music a lot faster, in a span of um, uh, 3 or 4 weeks sometimes. And with Ritwis, for example, you see that he's releasing his album with Nuclear, like every single week they're putting out a new track.
Yeah.
So, there are newer, different ways that artists are creating stuff and releasing stuff, and it's so very exciting.
No, that's actually an interesting point because I've always been a person who liked albums, and at some point, I feel the album has become um, a much smaller thing to kind of expect in recent times. How's it been for you, Kevin?
For me, I think my music has grown through the pandemic, so I'm thankful to it in a certain way, but I'm not too thankful because I have to sit at home.
Mm.
Uh, but yeah, like I've been a touring musician again all through my life before the pandemic started, and I had to alter what I was doing. And the pandemic kind of made me think differently, and connecting with my community was different again. So rethinking my strategy with music helped because
Mm.
being a touring musician also felt like it's a good thing, like seeing a few hundred people felt like you had a bigger crowd, right? But
Mm.
the minute you stop that, you get into a panic mode and you're like, how do I get an audience?
Yeah.
And when you do things differently, you also realize that there is a bigger audience online. And funnily, I could tap into it a little bit with the music I
Mm.
could make. And it was an interesting experience, I think, to figure that out in my own head. Like
Mm.
I didn't know that beforehand, and it helped that the pandemic kind of pushed me to not procrastinate but to like create.
Mm. That's actually an interesting point to not procrastinate and create, because at some point we had to figure out the stuff which we had, I guess, at home to keep creating, and you didn't have the excuse to say that I can't find a studio or I can't do one booking here or get somebody in there. And at some point, you start doing stuff from like how we're recording this now, even now, in that sense. I want to go to Arjun. Arjun, I want to ask you because I remember the time when you first sent this report to me, right? When I looked at the culture next piece, um, there were a bunch of pieces which surprised me. Some things which I felt like totally made like, okay, but I kind of get why this has happened. But if you look at from a broad perspective, if you look at music, what are the things that that you say would be top line in terms of just like how people have been consuming and what are they consuming?
Yeah, and thanks for the question. And I just want to say before that, pretty inspirational to hear from Kevin. You know how he decided not to procrastinate but create. I wish we knew the formula for that. It would be super useful and something to learn as well. I think so. The Culture Next report, which you referred to, Varun, we bring that out. I think this is the third edition that we've done. It's a global report. Last 2 years, it's included India data, and the reason we do it is because I think at some level we feel like with the millennial and the Gen Z audiences, Spotify seems to have a much deeper connection. I think a lot of the sort of cultural intersections, the kind of influences, the work that is happening around creation that actually goes into building culture happens from that generation, and it exhibits itself on Spotify a lot. So we've been very, very close and very keen and eager to understand the people from who are in that age bracket, Gen Z and millennial. And I want to call out that as the oldest person on this podcast, I have absolutely zero authority to be talking about Gen Z or millennial attitude. So I'll stick to what the report says. But I think largely three things. One is overall, or at an audio level, obviously consumption has gone through the roof. A lot more people spending a lot more time listening. If you, and this is not just music, it's also podcasts, and it varies across ages and genres and so on, but a lot more time is spent listening. I think that is where it then starts sort of following two different paths. If you look at the Gen Z audience, for them, audio is really, they see it as a more wholesome experience. It's part of that chill routine. It's a part of almost a mindfulness slash wholesomeness. That's the role that audio is playing, whether it is listening to music to be in that moment. You could be at home with a lot of people around and you want to do your own, so audio provides that escape. And in many ways we are finding it actually provides an escape even from more visually stimulating stuff, right? So you want to turn off screens, but you still want to be plugged in and you want to have your own moment and be. So I think that whole chill, wholesomeness, great content, mindfulness, I think that's what we see in the Z's. And for millennials, it's interesting. I think it's a lot more nostalgia, right? So I think it's a pining for those times when we didn't have to, pre-pandemic basically.
I have a
just 2 years.
Backstreet Boys mix on my Spotify. I am just like full
And,
disclosure.
and my Discover Weekly thinks that I've time traveled here from the 80s or something, because it's all like 80s pop all the time for me, pretty much. So I think these are so at an overall level, a lot more listening is happening across music and podcasts. Amongst the younger crowd, it's almost a part of your daily routine in much more meaningful ways than just entertainment or, let me listen to music. And for the older relatively, for millennials, it's about nostalgia. It's about sort of reconnecting with better times that were there before and sort of a throwback in some way that audio and music helps them go through. So that's what we're largely seeing.
This is whole point about, I feel that we used to go listen to artists and go listen to certain kinds of music, but I feel in recent times we listen basis mood. Like, I know that I've seen myself go towards like a focus related playlist sometimes. Sometimes I want to just listen to something which is totally like lo-fi. You'll find something stripped down, which is like you go acoustic, go singer-songwriter. I want to ask Hanita this question, because I thought when I was running through your tracks and I saw this piece that a lot of your stuff is also very personal. It's about a certain, like, the emotions which I would pick up, and I ran through, and I also saw a few things online in the sense that there's loneliness, there is obviously there is love, there's feeling less alone and all that stuff, which is genuinely, I think if there were terms which would go by pandemic moods, those would be right up there, right, in terms of what most of us have felt. Would you say that's been your genre, or is that your genre kind of became that, at least in your focus area? Not maybe genre, but maybe your focus in just some terms of the kind of music you're putting together?
Honestly, it's been kind of like a mission statement, like how a business writes a mission statement. The same way, like Arjun was saying, that, a lot of children who are listening to music, they're looking for some sort of comfort. I found comfort in Damien Rice's music. I found comfort in Ben Howard's music, and I wanted to be a musician because I wanted to grow up and be that person for someone else. And that's how my songwriting evolved, making it more and more personal, making it more and more authentic in a way that they listen to my songs and they go like, okay, I'm not the only person who's going through this. There's also this artist that I admire so much, or there are also these million people who are watching this video or listening to this song or connecting with this. And I just wanted to be that voice for people. And I noticed during the pandemic, I whatever emotions I was feeling, I was pretty sure that everyone around me was also feeling those things. I did this series on Instagram called 21 Days, 21 Songs, in which I asked people to share their thoughts, their feelings, their stories, whatever they were going through in the first 21 days of the lockdown. And I wrote a song each and every single day about their stories. And I found that to be absolutely revolutionary, because suddenly, I wasn't writing about my life,
Mm.
but those songs were still very, very authentic to me artistically. Even though they weren't my stories, they felt like they could be my stories. And
Mm.
everyone in my audience, like, they deepened their connection with my music and with me a lot more. So yeah, I think it's beautiful that, as human beings, we discriminate against so much against each other on all these small little things
Yeah.
that don't even matter, and all of us are going through the same kind of emotions irrespective of even age.
Mm.
Like, everyone has been through the same kind of ordeals, same kind of obstacles. And there should be a lot more understanding between us than there is. So it just blows my mind that we're all going through the same thing.
Yeah, you make a fascinating point. It is the fact that in a weird way, especially recent times, we've been more connected and more alone. Right?
Yeah.
It's that mixture of things that we've all kind of gone through. Sorry, those are my dogs. If you can hear them barking somewhere in the background. Um, and yeah, they definitely keep me connected. But we have been that way, and I feel that in a way that as an artist to go look for some form of inspiration, something to kind of connect you to put your music together. And in many ways, as much as we look at social media as being this thing that keeps us away from what we create, what you just spoke about is almost facilitating, right? Facilitating community, facilitating voices and stories and everything else over there. Um, so when you look at that way, would you say that you've gone from more personal stories as you went wider? Did that change just how you put music together?
um I think it changed in the way that it became our stories instead of just my story. It became a more of a community thing, like you said. And I mean, there were still songs that I wrote from my perspective.
Mm.
They might have been their stories, but, say for example, someone said that, they have like debilitating anxiety and they're not able to sleep, and I wrote a song called, Sleep Little Angel.
Mm.
So I'm singing to them, it's
Mm.
still coming from my perspective, but I'm singing to them like a friend and not a stranger. And immediately that, that creates such a beautiful connection. And yeah, a lot of people really like the song, and I hope to release it soon as well.
Kevin, I want to ask you this question: is that you obviously a part of Vertigo, and from there you start creating music by yourself. Um, how did obviously there would have been a change of process that you would have gone through as an artist as that happened. And obviously then there was the change in artist as you started to do more stuff from home, like you said. Um, so can you run me by how that's kind of evolved, and how, let's say, has community played a part of it? How you kind of dug into how you put your music together with in yourself, and how did that kind of go?
Yeah, so with Vertigo, things were very different for me. Like, I
Mm.
was starting out and I was making music with a whole bunch of people, and sometimes even if the ideas come from me, sometimes like I have to go through a bunch of people to like make sure that the song is complete. And obviously, because we were touring and like writing music at the same time, it was more like we were always like doing things together. But it happened when I just picked up a guitar, an acoustic guitar that I bought, and it came home. And I remember picking it up one day, and I'm feeling really happy playing an acoustic instrument, and thinking this would never work with Vertigo. You know, it felt so personal that I wanted to write to myself more than anybody else, and I thought this should be just for me. Like I think I was a little selfish there, but at the same time, I just wanted to tell a different story, from my end. With Vertigo, I was writing music about like different things, but never something very personal to me. I was always writing about being lost somewhere, but like, in a very different way. And when I started picking up the acoustic guitar, I wanted to like connect in a different way, and I thought um, writing songs about love or writing songs about depression or the simple things that matter to you, like your everyday conversation, is what I wanted to write about. And obviously, like Arjun mentioned, nostalgia played a big part in how I was writing music as well. Like I grew up listening to a lot of hits by Backstreet Boys or like Justin Timberlake and stuff like that, right? So for me, that was the driving point for music for me. And when I wrote music, I thought, as Kevin Fernando, I want to write hits,
Mm.
but also at the same time, I should connect with my audience. I have two sides to me, which is like being a very emotional person
Yeah.
and at the same time being driven by nostalgia. So I just thought, let me put both together and try to write, try to just be a hit machine. That's what I thought I should be, but at the same time connect, you know, with my audience, with my music, because each of my song, like every song of mine has a story,
Mm.
and I like telling the stories to people. Like most of the time people text me saying, hey, this story I really connected with, this song I can really connect with, right? So even with my latest song, um, that I released as part of the radar program, which is I'll Find My Way to You Tomorrow, was written in the perspective of the pandemic, right? Like I have a friend who was going, like, who had COVID and stuff, and we were on a call, and that's when I started thinking about the song. Like I thought, someone going through COVID and sitting at home alone, they need something to listen to,
Yeah.
and I thought I should write something that connects to them. So when I wrote that song, it was more like me telling my friend, hey, don't worry, I'm here, you know. So, but that's a story that I wanted to like tell people, because I'm very emotional and I wanted to connect with my friend at that point of time. Not like, you know, but at the same time, I brought my own hit making process in my head, and I thought, okay, let me put both together
Mm.
and tell the story as a person. And yeah, like I think it's a little complicated in my head, but it's like simple to understand when you listen to the music.
I, yeah, I guess the creation is always more complicated than the end result, right? And I think that's the most interesting part about the simplest forms of music when you listen to them, is that I'm guessing and I'm not a musician, but I've been just like a hardcore consumer of all forms. And I've always realized that if you go through the process of how it's made, you always realize that the simplest ones take the longest to kind of go through filters in your own head before it kind of comes out. And how is the community kind of reacted to that? How your music, and how has that happened?
It's been beautiful, because like for me, I've grown through the pandemic. So most of the people who've connected with me are also people I've met through lockdown. Like I've not met them, but like I'd like to tell my community that you're not fans of mine, but you're just friends, right? So like I like to connect with everybody. I try to send voice notes, or like I reply to people whenever I get the chance to, and that's been something that I like doing, because like everybody reaches out to you thinking, hey, I've connected with this, I want to connect with the musician too, to understand what they had in their head. And I'd like to let them know that I am there listening to you, and I know your story now, and I'm also like, I'm telling you my story, so like get to understand me as a person, and I'm trying to understand you as a person, so that helps me write better also, is what I feel. And the community played a big part for me to grow as an artist as well, because pre-pandemic I never thought that I would connect personally with audience, and once that started, I started growing as an artist too.
I
I
want to
just
pull up. Oh, no, yeah, I was going to pull
sorry,
Arjun in here.
yeah.
Yeah.
No, I think both of them had some very connected and interesting points, which I just wanted to refer to. I think one thing that came out as I was listening to both of them was this sort of, what is it? The dealing with loneliness in some way,
Mm.
right? So there was a lot of talk about connection, loneliness, and if you look at the outcome of the study that we've done as well, over two-thirds of people have said that audio helps them overcome that loneliness, right? Which is actually a massive responsibility if I think about it, in some way. To that, if you are that voice that is actually helping people, giving them companionship and being with them when they need, then that's actually quite crazy. And the role that audio plays in that space is super interesting and really big. Almost more than 75%. I think the other thing that Hanita also referred to earlier was around mental health, and I think there are two things. One is just higher levels of awareness that it is something to think about and work on, and it is part of the conversation. It is not just some and with the Z's especially, we see it being significantly higher. Probably not surprising that also a higher percentage of actually younger people say that they struggle with mental wellness, so to say, than you would expect. Millennials who are probably spend some time working, they've been out there in the real world a lot longer than say some of the younger folks, but still the struggle with the times and the ability to maintain a balance seems to be higher for the younger audiences and younger generation, and audio seems to play a role in helping overcome that. So I thought that was really interesting. Everything around fan connection, whether it was creation, whether Anita spoke about how she wrote, but the stories felt the same. I think all of them build up towards that larger point of companionship and connection in some way.
I actually want to pose a follow up on that, Arjun. Is that I think also what's interesting is just the fact that it's also forming culture in a very different way, right? Culture was generally formed through music in a very different manner, but it also include stuff that you would do in real life, or as we call it, outside our houses or outside where we are. I'm going to use terms like IRL at this point of time, but there's also been this whole aspect of saying to find inspiration to create. You would always assume that you'd have to go somewhere, you meet people, you go to spaces, you do all that stuff. And now at some point, while we are in many ways static, we're all feeling different things. And the more and more I look at the kinds of music that's doing well, there's two kinds, right? One kind is whatever gets picked up and becomes a song on Reels or TikTok globally. Or there's stuff that you listen to because you really want to, it really is going with what you're feeling. What I wanted to understand from you is that how is that mix kind of worked on? Are you seeing, obviously, the large trend of stuff which I will listen to when I just want to be by myself and listen to the track, but also there's a lot of stuff which I'm like, oh, I want to make a fun reel, so let me go find a track that works with that. And there's this weird mixture where we're going to two extremes of kinds of music, because there it's all about that hook and that first half a second, if not even a second. So how was that kind of shown out in just in terms of how you look at the data? Arjun, to you.
I think in terms, so when we looked at, I think when the music team looks at music, they have I think thousands of ways of analyzing and slicing the data. Largely, if you the way we contextualize it is around moods, moments, and mindsets, right? So moods are really largely what you're feeling. So you're feeling lonely, happy, in love, sad, excited, etc. Moments are activities. So similar to what you said, right? You want something for a fun reel. You want something to work out. You're vacuuming the house, and you just want something to sort of whatever that moment may be, or you're going for a drive. And mindsets, we think of it from a more long-term consumption or long-term listening behavior base. For example, I would be definitely classified as somebody who is really into nostalgia, because almost all of my music is from the 80s, the 70s, the 60s, and some 90s, right? But there could be people who constantly listen to new music, whom we would classify as having a discovery mindset, right? They always want to find something new. So we see listenership cut across all of these. I think the number one or number two moment for from middle of 2020 to middle of 2021 for India, specifically for the Z's, was chill. Right? It was overwhelmingly the largest sort of, I wouldn't call it a genre, but the mood of music that was played. From an activity point of view, we saw really interesting trends come out from more high-end, not high-end, but more high BPM music, or more what's the more danceable music, largely around fitness, right? Where we saw the workout routines and people needing that yoga as a sub classification of that, which also went back into chill. So I think when we map these moments and the moods of people, all the things that Kevin and Hanita were talking about sort of show up there, where there is a lot of focus on taking it easy, chill, mindfulness, calm, sleep, all very interesting sort of genres that we've seen come up more than they would have if things were just normal.
I think I should write down notes right about now.
I'm going to do that as well. I've already got my first prompt, as I always do, saying I need to go in for a break. But I have a bunch more questions to ask, so we're going to quickly take a break and be right back with Advertising is Dead. Welcome back to Advertising is Dead. We're still talking how people consume music and how creation of music around that has changed, or maybe changed, I think evolved, how artists kind of not just build communities, but create their songs, just go through the entire process of doing what they do. I want to go back to culture, and I feel culture is an interesting part, because most times as we evolve how we consume and what we consume in terms of music, it also kind of changes everything, right? Changes just like generally everything from what you wear to how you hang out with people to everything else kind of becomes that. And I'm going to ask a double-sided question here. I'm going to ask Hanita first, because I know she literally did this by writing songs, by asking people what they were feeling. Where do you draw the line between how much you draw from yourself and how much you pull from your audience? Because community building today, because social media is a great tool to connect with an audience and amplify and do everything else. But at some point, you can go beyond that line of saying it's all that, and you kind of leave the process, less time for the process. I've struggled with that in a smaller way as a podcaster. And I know obviously for you guys, it'll be larger because the process is so much more intimate. So how is that? How do you draw the line? How do you make sure that you keeping that right mix in place and get that balance?
I think, like creativity on its own, it's like a river, it ebbs and flows. So sometimes, when there are, there are these creative blocks, it really, really helps to draw in from the audience, because they are your biggest cheerleaders, your champions. And it really, really helps to do that. But, writing for me has always been, an emotional release of some sort. Whenever I was going through something, I would just like to put it into words, irrespective of whether or not I release it, whether or not it goes out into the world or not. I whenever I'm writing, when I'm overcome with emotion, it generally just comes from within. It doesn't come from, okay, will people like this? Will anyone connect with this or not? Just comes from a really deep, authentic place, where I'm just talking about my emotions, talking about what I'm feeling. And even there's this song I wrote called Chasing You, in which there are like specific details, or there's also a song called Don't Come Over, in which there's specific details about my life, which no one else might have gone through. The emotion is common between a lot of people. But I think that is what really makes you real to the audience. Because when you're trying to bullshit an audience, you're saying that just to cater to them and say that I'm going to talk about this, I'm going to talk about that. Maybe breakup songs really work, I'm going to write like a really sad breakup song.
Yeah.
They're gonna know it's not real. They can feel it. Even on social media, increasingly you have to be more of yourself, because the moment you start faking it, you will start losing that connection. Like people can tell, there are so many like non-verbal cues that we send out when we're talking to an audience on a story or on a post, or the way that we write things. People are able to tell there's something off about this person, and you automatically create these barriers and walls, because you want to be a persona that is not you. So I think increasingly, like when we talk about brand identity and self identity, if we see for an artist, that bridge is slowly shrinking, where the artist identity is almost it's like a sub part of self identity, instead of it being mutually exclusive circles. So I feel like it's really really interesting that what parts of yourself do you share now.
Yeah.
When is what is sharing too much, is something that I feel like a lot of people from our age struggle with. Like, if I had a bad day, do I really need to talk about it on social media? Do I really need to do this, or do it like there's a difference between oversharing and being authentic. And somehow we're still learning how to balance that, as as artists and social media personalities that we put out. um, but yeah, it really really helps to some days, when you're feeling like you're having creative block, ask your audience, or just generally whatever conversations are being sparked on the internet, even if they're meme trends or something, even if they're like catchy songs that or meme trends, and you do your own versions of it, and even if they're not fully released songs, you can just you can show a different part of your personality through drawing through the audience.
That's actually what you actually said is actually one of the peak struggles. I guess every creator kind of goes through, right? And in many ways, you never look at that as being. I mean, for me, that is literally a struggle that could be not just one song, could be many songs, because we all look at it differently. Um, Kevin, I want to ask you this question. I think it's something which you've sung about. You sung about friendship. You sung about relationships, and while you've also dug into your own life, like you said, you look at from an emotion standpoint. Um, how much have you kind of gotten that from people who listen to music? Has that made you evolve certain aspects of that, and change stuff around?
So for me, I think my music is more like a diary of my life. I think it's just a diary for me. I've always wanted to write something and like publish my life somewhere, and music was probably the only way I could do it pretty decently. The rest of it is not that great. I wanted to write a book. I was not great at it, and then I thought, okay, music is decent. Let's try that out like properly, right? So all my songs are stories from my life, which is why I find it easy to tell people about the story. And like I think people connect with it because, like Hanita said, uh, people see the real side of me, right? Like they don't think I'm like bullshitting a lot, but they just see that, okay, this guy is just telling us a story. And even when I was on stage, I've always not separated my life. I've always thought I'm not a musician on stage and a different person down when I'm talking to people, right? I've always thought I'm your friend on stage. That's how I've dealt with music in particular. So obviously, like when I talk to people, I get inspired by their stories, and maybe it might lead to something that makes me write something, but I have to feel it, like how I said, when I was talking to my friend who had COVID, like we were having a conversation about about different things, right? And about loneliness and stuff. And then a simple thing like me singing to her um, on the call made the difference. And I thought, hey, if I could do this for somebody, then I can do it for a bigger audience, right? Like I thought, if one person can feel good about me singing to them, then I should do this to more people going through the same thing. So that's how I that's how I think about music. I think music heals, and a lot of people connect with your story, and that's how I've dealt with my music.
Do you see your
Just
music kind of? I have one
no, go for
follow
it.
up
Go for it.
to him.
Yeah, go for it.
It's like
I have a follow up to that follow up.
do you feel that um, this will evolve differently once you can actually go do live performances, physical performances? Do you see that changing? I'm going to actually throw it to both of you, but I'm going to let Arjun come with this point as well.
No, let's hear this one and then I can ask. Mine was a different take on the creation. related question, but I'd love to hear what the live
All right.
aspect will bring.
So, like, I don't think I'll evolve too much. Like, I think I've always been very sure about who I was wherever I am. Like, uh, if I'm insecure, I'm insecure. I know that I'm insecure. If I'm not, I know I am not, right? Like, I know who
Yeah.
I am at that point of time. So, I don't change who I am. I just like try to understand myself better constantly. And yeah, like in terms of music, like even my parents tell me like the one thing that you've stuck to is being who you are with your music, you know? And I think that's a compliment and not a curse. So I think I take pride in being who I am with my music, and I don't think I will change it easily unless I think I'm wrong, going wrong somewhere. And yeah, I think that answers your question.
Yeah, it does. It does. Anita, would you say that changes for you? You see some pieces changing?
I see the live interaction really, really changing. Because earlier, before the pandemic hit and everything, the way that I performed was very serious. I portrayed myself as a very serious musician. Would only talk about my songs, created this wall between me and my audience, would not show different aspects of my personality. And then once the pandemic hit and I became more active on social media, I started treating like my whole persona like I'm a friend. Like I would talk to them the way I would be talking to a friend. And now I'm a little skeptical of how that's going to translate into a live setting, because on my Instagram or my social media, I'm more joking around and saying stupid stuff. But when my songs are still very, very emotional and they're very serious, and that is a part of my life that I treat with a lot of respect, and it's sacred to me. So they might expect my personality the way that it is on social media, and they might see something else in a live setting. So it's going to be extremely interesting to see how that pans out. Whether or not they'll see, okay, like the way she would talk to us on in DMs, for example, it was like way more warm or something. But in person, I'm a very, very shy person. So when I meet new people, I kind of freeze up. So you know
You're just
uh,
going to say DM me and tell me what you want
yeah,
to say.
please
I'll
DM
respond
me.
better.
I'm gonna text you back. Can we text in person? I'm gonna be like, text it to me, I'm gonna text it back.
I'm telling you, guys, culturally going to become a thing that we think like, we communicate better like this. Even if we stand in front of each
Yeah.
other, let's just WhatsApp each other. Like,
There was a joke, right? A kid was showing his phone to his mom with the phone icon and asking, "Okay, how do you uninstall this app?" Right? Because they don't need that the green phone thing at all. Everything is basically on chat. My question, actually, the follow up was a different one around creation, really. So I'll give you a little bit of background on why I'm asking. So I listen to Radar a lot because I try to discover new artists. Came across both of your music on Radar, on Fresh Finds, and all the other sort of curated playlists that we have. One thing that struck me, I think, and as I was thinking back to the musicians who were popular or hot when I was younger, etc., is that the sound is so much more global. Right? I don't think there is no way. Like there used to be this joke that one of the things Indians always say when they see a very clean place is, "Oh, this place is so clean that it doesn't feel like we are in India." Right?
yeah, yeah.
And nowadays, when I listen to a lot of the tracks, if I was just closing my eyes and listening, there is no way to say this person is from Chennai or from Pune or from Bangalore or any of those places. They could be from anywhere. And the reason I was asking is from an influences point of view. We see that even in the research that uh, Gen Z folks generally tend to see themselves as more global citizens as opposed to identifying with their own geography or little niche or anything, right? So, just wondering for you, like, do you see yourself as somebody whose audience is global? How does that work its way backwards? So how does sort of influences from a cross-border or artist you like and so on, like, how does that pan out when your music gets put or listened to in a country that you don't expect, right? Oh, so I was talking to some artist and said, somebody listened to my track in Lithuania, right? And so, when stuff like that happens, what is that like? And how does it go both ways, both from a creation as well as an audience point of view?
So,
Either of you
so
can
when
go.
I was, so when I was younger, I have a brother who's also a drummer, like my cousin brother who was a drummer. When I was younger, when I was writing music, he used to walk up to me and tell Kevin, um, "You have such a global sound to you, but the one thing that I'm thinking is you're not clear when you're singing." Like I, he said, when I listen to English music from the Western world, right? Like he said, you can understand things clearly, but when you're singing, I can't understand what you're doing, and that's his reason why people don't listen to Indian music and people listen to Western music. And also another thing that he said is, don't fake your accent just to
Mm.
be, just to like reach out to that audience. He just said, just clear out the way you sing, but stay true to who you are. And if you do that the right way with good quality of music and good quality production, the crowd will come to you. It's just a matter of time, you know. And that is one advice that I took too seriously. I said, okay, I should work on my accent, but at the same time my accent should be very neutral and like true to me, that only my pronunciation should get better, but my accent shouldn't change. It shouldn't
Yeah.
sound American, it shouldn't sound British, it should sound me,
Mm.
a local Chennai boy singing English music. You know, that's how I looked at creating music. But obviously, I think of myself as a global citizen. I think my music can cater to a wider audience because I'm singing in a language that is open to a lot more people, and I expect my music to go to that crowd, which is also sometimes I think I pester people at Spotify, like people there, and I'm like, hey, I think my music should go to a lot more people. What should I do? Tell me, I want to know, and like sometimes I even apologize saying, I'm really sorry, I'm pestering, I'm also growing old, you should understand, things like that, right? But I think, yeah, like I think my music is made for a bigger audience. Like I've always wanted the world to listen to me, and I want to leave a mark. That's what I used to tell my dad as well. I said, when I die, like if someone searches for Kevin Fernando, there should be something that says this boy has done this, right? And I want that behind me, and not just a boy from Chennai on LinkedIn, you know.
Mm.
So that's how I think of myself, and I want to reach there.
You had me worried when you said I'm getting older, and if you are trying to say that, I have no idea what me and Arjun are going to do in this conversation. I'm going to let Hanita respond.
Um, Honestly, like whenever I'm writing my music, I'm not thinking too much about how it's going to reach out to people globally that much. But I do want to be a world performing artist. I want to, like Spotify gives you that insight that these are the people in these countries who are listening to your songs. And I feel like going to those cities and performing there and connecting with those people. And for a very long time I believed that to be international artists you just have to write in English. And to my surprise I found a lot of my Hindi tracks, for example Chehra, like the second most country or the third most country it's popular in is in Japan, which is so surprising because I'm like, what? Japan is listening to Chehra? I mean, do they even understand the language? And it was so surprising. And I think a lot of us, sell ourselves short in that sense, where we think that if we're writing in our indigenous languages, maybe we won't reach out as much. Um, and I think there are going to be people who are going to like your music irrespective of the language. And that is what we see with you know happened with K-pop, right?
Yeah.
Like no one really like this because Gen Z wants to be identify as a global citizen. They're more and more open to songs that are in different languages, movies are in different languages. And I think now is the time to even experiment with all these different languages that you're comfortable in. And it just provides different set of audience to you. And your English music can provide different subset, and your your own mother tongue, for example, can provide you with a different kind of audience in a different country, even maybe. So I think that is really interesting to me.
Hanita, talking about Japan kind of like made me think about something else. Uh, there are these songs by from movies by Rajnikant, and some of these songs went viral in Japan, you know.
Wow.
And I was just thinking about it, like these random Tamil songs from India that I think only the south of India listens to was also like really popular in Japan at some point, and like there were a lot of people who followed trends. Like I think this was like before like TikTok and all these things, and people in Japan used to wear clothes that Rajni wore in these movies and like dance to
Mm.
these songs that they didn't understand but they found very fascinating. You know, I think it is an interesting thing that happens in Japan. I don't understand how they do it, but like they just like music from different places. What I feel.
I guess
Yeah,
in
I
his
think
case, he
Japan.
transcends all genres. I guess maybe that's it.
I think Japanese people are really tastemakers. You'll find that that is why vinyl, for example, it's more sold in Japan. So I kind of feel like they're way more open to different kinds of music, which is very interesting.
What I also find interesting is, in many ways, and I feel being a tastemaker today, being able to curate while you're creating as well is an interesting piece, right? Um, I went to both your Spotify profiles and I scrolled down to see what playlists you have made. And they aren't just like random playlists which most of us make, right? Like if you go to mine, you will see one playlist which says Rage. Terrible name for a playlist, but very aptly explains the kind of music you will find there, and so on and so forth. But these were curated for specific things, kind of feed into the kind of music you create as well. Um, and and as you were talking, I'm thinking about the fact that you're also kind of putting together what you listen to, what people can listen to, what you blend into as well. So how much that curation kind of becomes a part of your process, just for you to keep listening and keep keep getting not just influences, but really be able to listen and kind of also say, okay, yes, I'm listening to this. So in that sense, it makes you broader in that sense as an artist as well. Either of you are
Um,
kicking open.
Yeah, so I love curating playlists of independent artists. I feel like, independent artists in India, they deserve way more recognition and way more listeners than they're getting right now. Even people who have million streams, I feel like they just deserve 10 million or a billion streams, because like I'm not able to tell the difference, like Arjun was saying. When I listen to their music, I'm like, there is no difference in terms of quality of production or songwriting than an international song. And it deserves way more. And I try to educate whatever my audience is about all these different artists, even if they're new and upcoming artists. I like to introduce them to my audience as well. And ultimately, like, people then trust your taste in music, and they also connect with she's someone who recommends really good music to us, so they become more connected as well. So there's that as well. And sometimes I also curate music which is a mix of independent and international music, but those are more mood based things.
Mm.
Like I have this playlist called Duk R. One playlist I had in the start of quarantine called Bartan Dholo playlist.
Very important one.
Best songs to listen to while washing your dishes.
Mm.
So really, it's a very um, fun way to interact with your Spotify listeners, because we don't have social profiles over there. We just have like a tiny bio. There's like very little we can show our personality. So these playlists that we curate, whatever titles that we have, whatever image art that we have, I think it's a very cool way to connect with them and make them more curious to know about us.
For
That's
me, I
actually.
think curation is very mood based. Like
Mm.
Hanita mentioned towards the end of a or when she was talking, it's very mood based for me because I listen to playlists a lot, like Spotify curated playlists in general a lot, and I noticed that they're very mood based, and I wanted to do something similar because like I wanted to pick on certain songs that I really like, but also mix it with, you know, like songs that would never be on a playlist but like fit the mood, right? So I was always like curious about curating playlists, and I think even Spotify does that to an extent. Spotify helps me discover music that I've never found or never had the chance to find before, right? Like uh, there are songs that Spotify suggests. Spotify is more like a friend that suggests songs to you, right? Like that's how I think of Spotify to me, because like every time I add like 5 songs I know and I personally like in that particular genre, then the next few suggestions, I'm gonna sit and listen to all of them. Like a friend of mine recently said, "How do you find these songs? Like where do you go and find these songs?" And I said, "I'm my stalking game on Spotify is just like so pro level, you know, like I just go full on with Spotify's suggestions and I listen to every single song, and then after that I put like a bunch of songs in a playlist, and then I rearrange them to like fit my style, and I use the shuffle to like help me like curate it a little bit as well. So I put in a lot of effort into my playlists when I'm listening to them and when I'm like curating them. I think, yeah, like I think even the Gen Z audience and the millennial audience kind of a millennial and the Gen Z audience, they think of Spotify as a friend who suggests songs to them, right? Like because before all this started, like I think Arjun would relate to this story. You always had a friend who would come and tell you, "Hey, did you listen to this song?"
Yeah.
Now I think Spotify does that to you.
I used to be that friend. I don't have any. I
Yeah,
don't have a
I
work
was going to say
anymore.
that. I was going to say the same thing, which was many of our mission was to be that person, right? The
Yeah.
person who knows the latest music and who says, "Oh, you know, this artist, that some
Yeah.
obscure fact about
Yeah.
somebody."
Your indie music
The
whistleblower has gone away because you no
Yeah.
longer need.
And for me, actually, two things, right? One is Varun, again, Kevin successfully making me feel really old on this call. But one was, back in the day, we would do mixtapes,
Mm.
right? And but then again, if you collected like 50 of the mixtapes that people made, 80% of the songs would still be the same, right? You would
Yeah.
have Richard Marx and Brian Adams and the usual routine. So that discovery process is actually now just insane. And that much, the whole world is basically opened up to you. I think the other thing around curation, which I just remembered when Varun brought it up, which is interesting, which is we also see that reflecting popular culture in some way, right? So there is this whole thing of making a vaccination playlist,
Mm.
right? Which is okay, what is that vaccination trip to and fro? People will share that on social, etc. There was songs to play if you're stuck in the Suez Canal, right? Which was the ship. Remember the ship that got
Yeah.
stuck,
Yeah.
Evergreen? Yeah.
Yeah.
And apparently somebody actually listened to one of those playlists on that ship, right? When it was stuck.
Oh man.
So I think there are curation as a way to express
Yeah.
yourself and react to the world is also something that we're seeing happening a lot. Just wanted to add that in.
You know, the more and more we've spoken, there's one underlying piece, right? Is that I feel we're listening by mood a lot more than we ever did, or maybe we're speaking about it in that sense. Because even mixtapes had a certain flow, right? I used to have a friend, and he used to do this thing that if you ever take a road trip, I remember this time we were driving from Pune to Chennai via Bangalore. I was getting off in Bangalore, and he ordered it. He timed it to saying, okay, 6 in the morning we'll leave, so we'll start with this kind of music, and by the time we hit 12, it will range to this. The road will be this. So he calculated it. Okay, he spent way too much time on that playlist. We spoiled it all by changing tracks in between. But that's what we used to do. We should make those playlists in that sense and kind of move that ahead. But also that was also around the mood. So I feel like it's going more and more mood based. Like I used to go to a site, I don't know if it exists anymore. It has no reason to exist anymore. It used to be a site called musicovery.com where you could pick up a singer or a song and it would give you almost like similar artists in this kind of mode. Like almost you get like this, it's called like how your mind maps work, where there's all that stuff flowing out. And I used to keep going there to try and find new artists because I wanted songs of a certain mood or similar to certain artists. And the more and more we dig into it, what I like what Kevin was saying as well, right, is that you kind of discover tracks which you would never have discovered otherwise. You would always gone with the popular ones, or does the Billboard Top 100 even exist anymore? I don't know. I remember there was a time you'd go to that. That is like me being like totally like old school about this, but the Billboard Top 100, which is the number one song on that right now. But yeah, so I think I progressed, but I keep going back to mood. It's no longer about that. It's about saying what do you want to listen to for your mood, and as long as you have those available, the more and more we're tapping into that. I don't know what you guys feel about it. At this point, I'm going to let this be a free for all for whoever's listening. Don't let anybody speak at any point of time.
I'm
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm feeling super nostalgic, like just thinking about how I used to discover music. Like, we used to have these, there was, of course, like no streaming platforms. There used to be high amount of piracy.
Hmm.
And we would exchange these pen drives where people would put in their entire collection. And then, I would give them my collection. And suddenly there would be completely different kind of music that you listen to. Like, there would be suddenly like Metallica, Breaking Benjamin, and Britney Spears, and Avril Lavigne,
Hmm.
and Linkin Park, just everything
Yeah.
together. And just listening to each and every one of those songs and figuring out which one you like.
Yeah.
There was no kind of process behind it. You would just do that. And another discovery platform for me was watching VH1. I would
Hmm.
literally sit with a notebook because I loved music so much. Whatever song that I liked, I would write it down to, later search on YouTube and listen to it. I would just dedicate like 2 hours of my life after school and just writing down those songs and listening to them later. And now that you see, like how much it's evolved, and especially, like for like music, because it was such a huge part of my life, I wanted to become an artist. And now, because of Spotify and other streaming apps as well, discoverability and finding your kind of music has become so much easier. It creates beautiful recommendations, whatever you like. It'll give you exactly that with these daily mixes and discover weekly. And I think it's inspiring a whole new generation of creators who have found music that speaks to them.
Hmm.
And for us, I think it was a little bit more challenging because we had all these things that internet wasn't as accessible back then. And now it's I think it's inspiring so many more people. Like music, it doesn't just heal, it also inspires. Like if someone, if a young person is listening to those songs, they will get inspired to create. And that's why I'm seeing a lot of young 16-17-year-old artists who are putting out their music. Like even putting out your music has become so much more accessible.
Yeah.
So it's just amazing to see all this happening. And I'm so excited for the next 5 years what's going to happen and how massively the indie landscape is going to change.
So for me, when I was younger, like I don't think piracy even before, like pre-privacy is what I'd like to think of it. My dad used to suggest music to me. Like I think that's how I started listening to English music. Even like I was always listening to Tamil songs that happened to be on the movies in the movies, right? So, but uh, my dad used to collect a lot of cassettes, and he used to have all these cassettes by Linkin Park or Brian Adams or Backstreet Boys and stuff like that. And he used to force me. I'll be out playing and like he'll shout. He'll be like, "Kevin, come listen to this now," and he'll be like blasting music. I remember the first English song that I ever heard was "Everybody" by Backstreet Boys, right?
Hmm.
Like uh, he used to blast it and be like, look at this music, like what are you listening to, you know and that's like a good throwback to those times, because like I remember when we were cleaning up our house once, when we were moving to a different house, I had all these cassettes that my dad wanted to clear, and I said, don't clear it, I want them. you
Hmm.
know like it's still back at home. I have a cupboard where I fill up CDs and cassettes that I used to have CD players, cassette players as well, because I feel it reminds me of who I was before all this started. So I have like around 15 cassettes that I've saved up because I really like those songs from those cassettes and CDs. Like I used to go to this shop called Odyssey,
Hmm.
and I'll go to this music section and I'll like look at the CDs there and I'll be like, hey, this artist has released so many CDs. Let's go like buy a few and like try out these songs. People are talking about this artist, right? Like so I used to do that a lot. And obviously in school and then in college, a bunch of my friends used to like introduce me to music, and they used to give me all these live CDs. Even my cousins, they used to introduce me to Iron Maiden and that kind of music as well. And they said, hey, you should check out this music because everybody is listening to
Hmm.
different things, right? Like, and I think that's what Spotify did, and they made it more accessible. They said, we'll do everything for you. You just like sit there and see what you want. Like Spotify is that, like I said again, like Spotify was that one friend to me who's also like telling, I'm not just gonna give you Iron Maiden, but I'm also going to give you like BTS.
Hmm.
So you
Yeah.
decide what you want to choose.
So I actually want to ask you guys of the same question. And I realize we've done this chat for over an hour. I can keep going on longer and longer. Um, I normally ask people for recommendations towards the end of every episode, but I want to do something different here. I want to ask each of you, and Arjun, you're not excluded from this. You're honorary millennial for this because you're just on the borderline. Like I just crossed over. Tell me a song you kind of gone back to in recent times, and a song and a song or an artist you discovered recently. As you have, I think Kevin's giving me this music stalker. As you've been in that mode, just tell me an artist you kind of gone back to, you hadn't listened to in a while, but kind of went back to, or it can be a song, can be an artist, but something you've gone back to, something you've discovered. I'm going to ask each of you that. I'll start off with Hanita.
Um, I think something I've gone back to is listening to Britney Spears. I think, especially with the Free Britney movement and everything that was happening, her music also started gaining momentum again.
Yeah.
And suddenly, when I was listening, I was like, why was I so harsh and judgmental, when I was younger? Like, whatever the media would feed to us, we would believe it. There was not as much free thinking or, objective thinking at that point in time. And just listen to her entire discography again, and I was just like, this is really, really amazing music. And just listening to her music just made me really, really happy. And a new artist that I discovered was Alexander 23. He has this song called I Don't Know You Yet. And I actually discovered it through Instagram. And just like the moment the verse comes in, the very first words come in, they just have this huge emotional punch that it gives you, and it immediately hooks you. And I really, really love that artist.
For
Kevin?
me, I think I always go back to a lot of artists, like, and I don't pick on the entire discography. I don't think that works for me. I like listening to certain songs, but I made a whole nostalgia kind of playlist for myself to listen to. So it has like a bunch of songs by Britney Spears, by Backstreet Boys, by Justin Timberlake. I love the whole Timberlake phase with Timberland, that whole album that he
Yeah.
did with him. Like that's my vibe. So I had like a whole playlist that I made around that music, and I'm obsessed with like boy band music. So I try to like fit all of them in one playlist. So, but one song I was totally obsessed with again was Toxic by Britney Spears. I think uh, this was even before the whole Free Britney movement that started, but like I just heard that song and I was like, oh my god, someone could make a song like this out of out of a sample that they heard somewhere, right? Like I think
Yeah.
that was incredible for me. And yeah, I've always been obsessed with that song, and I went back to that song and I had it on loop. A new song that I really liked. It's not a new song, but I really like the song by Bruno Major called Nothing.
Mhm.
It's very simple. I've always liked finding these cheesy songs that are not really cheesy, you know, like they're so sweet that you don't think it's cheesy, but like the lyrics flow in a certain way. And the song has had like really cool uh, lyrics around, you know, being comfortable with someone, right? Like, and I felt that connected with me because I wanted to be that person who writes like that. So as simple as, you know, when it showcases, there is one line that says take off our phones and turn off our shoes,
Mm.
you know, that line describes how, you know, when you're in love you don't really know what you're saying. You take
Yeah.
off your shoes, you turn off your phone, but like he writes, we take off our phones and turn off our shoes, right? Like, I think I connected with that a lot. And he speaks about Nintendo, and there's a Nintendo sound in the background. So, you know, stuff like that. I think that was one song that I really connected with, like, recently.
Arjun, we're going to let not make you feel
Yeah,
left out. I'm
no,
going to
I
go
mean, I mean,
last. I've
a
given
lot of
myself enough time to
tracks.
think about
The
this.
good thing is both of them are on a nostalgia trip, so I know all the music they're talking about. So that's good. I think for me, what I discovered, it's not really, I wouldn't say it's an artist, but there's a documentary on Hotstar called Summer of Soul,
Mm,
which is about the Black Woodstock, right? Which
mm,
is a festival of soul that happened in Harlem the same time that Woodstock was happening, but nobody talked about it until they found the archival footage, etc., and they've put it out now. And you have everybody, right? You have Stevie Wonder, pretty much anybody who was anybody on that Motown soul, like that time period, performing live. It's a great documentary. I think it's a gives a really good insight into society in America at that point in time, but amazing music as well. So that's something that I watched and I enjoyed. I think from an artist discovery point of view, I'll call out two artists. Um, there's Sunflower Tape Machine, right? From Chennai, he's got a song out called Sophomore Sweetheart. It's very like exactly the kind of vibe that I enjoy. Very sort of a poppy 80s, happy, nice vibe music. So I think I'd encourage people to check that out. And our very own Bombay Banduk, a member of whom actually works for Spotify, have come out with their Yaman recently, which
mm.
also I enjoyed a lot. So I would recommend these two to anybody who's listening.
Um, I have weirdly enough, I went through I think last few weeks went through a major Backstreet Boys phase because there was a Pixar movie trailer that came out, um, which had a Backstreet Boys song, and I was like, just went down that entire thing. My entire search history just become that. So that's I went down that rabbit hole for a while. Um, but weird, I have a 4-year-old who likes to listen to a lot of Dua Lipa and Justin Bieber. So that is the genre in our house at this point in time. I have to admit, I'm a Dua Lipa fanboy now. I genuinely enjoy her music. Bieber's growing on me. But the artist I've really found has been, I don't know if I'm pronouncing right, Joby, the lo-fi. So he's a lo-fi artist. I literally, I listen to lo-fi through the day. It's become my primary genre. So Jobi. So he's been like literally like I at some point when you listen to some playlists long enough that some of the artists keep showing up in your recommendations more and more. You say, who is this artist? And you kind of dig in. So yeah, that's been my. I think that also defines what my mood has been like for the last couple of years in that sense. But thank you so much, guys. Thank you for doing this. It's been. I always love talking to artists. I think there's so much more you get out of this, and Arjun has made sure that we don't just do artistic conversations, that we have some uh, and quantification. Not just I think there is some value to understanding where culture is going, and you can largely get that when you understand where music is going. I think that will never change. So thanks all of you. Come for advertising is dead, and keep making lovely music. And Arjun, keep telling us how people are listening to music.
Completely. Thank you so
Thank you
much,
so
Varun.
much
Thanks,
for
guys.
Thank
Kevin,
you.
Anita, was amazing.
Thanks for coming on
thank you so
advertising
much
is
for
dead.
having me as well.
Thank you.
IVM.